Marci, welcome to the Healthy Home Show. Thank you so much for joining me today from the US. I don't actually know what
You.
time it is there. I can never work out the time difference because our clocks have just changed, so it's confusing the hell out of me at the moment.
Well, it's after 11 o'clock a.m. here, and thank you for having me, Charlie.
Not at all. So I know you as a food justice expert and a fellow toxins educator, but I also know that you have a background in personal training and as a lifestyle coach. So I'd love for you to start, if you don't mind, by introducing yourself, what you do now, but also what brought you into the world of toxins education, particularly from the point of view of what you were doing before as a personal trainer.
So I'll start by how I jumped into the fitness arena. Actually, I wasn't jumping into the fitness arena in the sense that I have been an enthusiast for many years. I was one of the first people here stateside who discovered spinning. I was working in the music industry. That's where I have spent most of my adult life. And one of the a representative publicity for Universal Records was thanking me for all the wonderful work we had done together. And she says, "Hey, I'll take you to dinner, but you got to come spinning with me first." And I said, "Well, what is spinning?" She says, riding the bikes to music. And I thought, okay. And I went into my first spin class and I was spinning like I had been spinning for years. I had a great time and my clothes were soaked, right? And the next day, can we talk about me literally crawling out of the bed? Because I was a bit intensive for someone who wasn't doing that level of workout at that moment. So long story short, I love spinning, and I found my way to spin classes. But really, if I go back to 1990, I had to get sober. I had to go into an alcohol treatment center in April. I have an anniversary coming up. I'll tell my age here. 21st, 1990. And it was then that I decided I had been treating my body like a trash can, and then I would treat it like the temple that it is. And so I embarked upon maintaining sobriety first and foremost, but also uh, treating my body well. And so I was in the gym, and I've been active like that. So, I was bouncing around. I left the music industry, ended up in mortgages. And as everyone knows, that came crashing down. And so I was talking to one of my mentors, and she says, why don't you become a personal fitness trainer? And she was doing that on the side. She's a legal secretary and all. And she loved fitness like me. I said, that's a good idea. So, long version of how I became a fitness trainer. I was living in Las Vegas at the time I started working at Gold's Gym. And then I ended up coming to New York at my mother's request. I'm her only child, and she's gotten older, and I am currently her caregiver. So I've worked at Equinox, Blink Fitness, and I currently have two clients, even though I'm not in that industry anymore. A couple of my clients, a husband and wife, they had not worked out since I left, and they didn't want to go to any other trainer. I mean, I could be flattered by that, but no, I'm not. So about a year ago, they said, please come to the house and train us. So I've been training them twice, 2 to 3 times a week. And I've enjoyed it actually keeping that. If you don't do certain things, you lose it. You know what I mean? So having this husband and wife, uh, as trainees, as my clients, has really, uh, it's been good. So, as I'm training people, most people want to lose weight. That's usually what people want to do. But they kind of want to do it without making nutrition changes. And so,
Mhm.
along the way, I've gotten certifications for sports nutrition. I through the Institute for Wellness Education with Deb Teplo, I got a wellness certification because lifestyle matters. No matter if you are even trying to build muscle, lifestyle matters for our health and fitness. Period. And you can be a gym rat. You can be a gym rat all day long. Um, But if you're not getting enough sleep, I mean, sleep is so important. If you're not drinking enough water, a lot of issues we cause because we don't really zoom in on these smaller lifestyle
Yeah.
things. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I find that super important actually. But also, it's really funny that you used to be really into spinning because I did as well. I was a bit of a kind of spinning nut until actually I think I found out that basically it was really causing my cortisol levels to peak loads. And interestingly, because we hold a lot of weight around our middle, basically, if our kind of cortisol levels are high, I found that the moment I actually gave up spinning, or not gave up, but cut down substantially on it, was when, funnily enough, I began to lose a bit of weight because I think my body was in a bit of fight or flight mode because I was doing so much of the spinning. So it's really interesting, but I loved it. I mean, I love that kind of high energy stuff with music. I kind of, that's what I used to be really into. But you're right. I kind of did that same journey as well of then discovering, okay, it's not just about the exercise. It's a lot about the nutrition. And then even further than that, basically, it's about, the toxins in our food and the toxins in our environment. And that's where I put my focus next, which sounds like where you went to afterwards. Is that what you got you into kind of food education a bit more and looking at toxins?
so what actually happened is I was invited into a test group. Yes, there are companies that test their products. Particular product had a nutrition. It was gut health oriented, right? It's called the 4 week gut health protocol. And so, and it had low impact, kind of wrapping into what you're talking about right now. It was not recommended that we do high energy. So this particular super trainer, Autumn Calabrese is her name, she created a low impact workout. And so we were interested in learning more about gut health, and she directed us to Dr. Will Boltowitz. She had a podcast, and she says, check out Dr. Will Boltowitz. I interviewed him, and I since interviewed him, as you know, for a second time, actually. And I'm reading his book, Fiber Fueled. And he is a gastroenterologist turned, gut health influencer in the social media world. And in his book, Fiber Fueled, he mentioned generally recognized as safe
Hmm.
lists, called it a loophole. And for those who don't know, I mean, it's an addendum that was added to it was, how do I put it? So there's a law from 1938 that was to protect us in terms of drugs and food,
Hmm.
to give the FDA more power than they'd had before. 1958, they wanted to strengthen the parts of it. This is stateside. And in that strengthening, the food companies go, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't have the same resources as the pharmaceutical companies to spend money on testing and so forth. And it made sense then. Well, there's a group of things that people have used, a group of additives. We've used salt for quite some time, sugar, you know, baking soda. So this generally recognized as safe, right? Because there was a history list was created then,
And
right?
what was the list called? Sorry.
Generally recognized as safe. That's GRAS, or some people
Okay.
call it GRAS. So there's a lot of hoopla around this right now because that list, primarily due to a change that the FDA itself instituted in 1997, allowing the food companies to self affirm. So they didn't have to go to the FDA for notifications or anything. And it was voluntary. So they absolutely took advantage of that, putting mostly new additives in, right? And this is how we've grown from like 800 to 10,000 plus. There's some people say it's 15,000. No one can tell you, definitely not the FDA, because the food industry, who they're supposed to be regulating, have literally had the reins, and they have been deciding what is safe. And their decisions are not based on our health, their
Mm.
decisions are based on their bottom line. And here we
Okay. So
are.
totally ballooned out of control. And so you're saying that there's, 10 to 15,000 additives stroke chemicals basically that are added into our food that we don't test, or at least in the US, because I know that the system in Europe and England is slightly different, although I wouldn't have said it's by any means perfect. But that are not regulated effectively. So even though they say, well, actually, I don't think they even do say they're safe. I think they just go, oh, there you are, it's in your food. And then basically it's for us to then not eat it because we find out later that we're reacting really badly to it, that it's causing loads of kind of issues with our gut, that it's causing loads of autoimmune issues. So, I mean, you've just explained really well how we arrived at this place because it's kind of money driven. And obviously, we've given over far too much power to these individual food companies to basically just self regulate. But what's happening about that now? Because obviously we all know that there's been a change of government in the US, and that we're hoping that there's going to be some changes maybe under the guidance of RFK Jr., and that maybe we're going to get some power back into our food and getting our food a bit healthier. Is that happening? Are you seeing any changes around that?
Now remember, Trump hasn't even been in power for 100 days yet. RFK is probably, I don't even think it's 3 months yet. But going back to when I read that, I was shocked. See, when you're in the industry, we're ahead of the curve because we're reading and we're, following people, the average person. And I was very average. I mean, I had to think that means, and oh, and this is the other part of it, 10,000 plus food additives. 99% have no studies. This was
Mm,
in the book Fiber Fuel. And then RFK Jr. went on to say, and this differentiates you guys from us, about 1,000 of them are banned and considered unfit for human consumption in other countries, i.e., the UK, and then the group of countries called the EU, right? Who have much better regulation, people first, environment first. That's the big difference. Um, is that the companies have to come with the documentation saying this is safe, right? That's overseas, not in the US. You get to
mm,
throw stuff into the marketplace here with the safety, uh, with someone, a group of people you've paid, a group of experts you've paid, and in looking at how the systems work, we had a group of people did a huge investigation, I'll call it. And I actually came across that recently. And they updated it. I spoke to one person on LinkedIn who was part of the initial 2013 investigation that was requested from Congress. And they came up, with a lot of the issues and how to resolve them. Nothing has changed. There
mm.
was a lot of hoopla then, and these same people updated it in 2023. I have both these documents, and I haven't had a chance to review it. I was actually preparing for a GRAS presentation, and I was stunned to see these things. And my concern was because everyone's excited. Yeah, basically, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is our new Health and Human Services Secretary, requested information. He requested that the FDA look into. So that's back to where we were in
Okay.
2010, where they requested, it took 3 years for them to do this big presentation with all the stakeholders, including the food industry. Nothing happened. 2023, some of the people updated it with probably all the horrors that have happened since then, right? And here we are in 2025. He's requesting it, right? But he's requesting it. He's wholeheartedly wanting this to change because his mandate is to bring down chronic disease in our country,
Mm.
which is impacting our country on every level, including our readiness to defend ourselves. Because everyone's fat. All the kids are fat. Okay, I'm not using any, uh, you know, uh, politically correct terms because I think that's another part of the problem. I've gained weight. You know, I personally have gained weight for, a number of reasons, but I'm not going to pretend that I haven't gained weight or, you know, fat.
Well, I actually, just to jump in there, actually, I think that's quite an important piece of the puzzle. And in terms of the fact that, toxins basically, they basically help us or keep weight on us, because actually the toxins are almost acting, or the fat, should I say, sorry, is actually acting as a protector for our body. So basically they say that obviously we're holding quite a lot of like fat around your middle because that's where your main organs are, and your body is there to protect you basically. And if you didn't have that fat there, then the toxins that are coming in our food and our water and our air would basically be going straight to our lungs and our liver and whatever. So the fat that we're holding around our middle and other places in our body is there like essentially to protect our main organs. So until we actually get those toxins out of our bodies and our environments and our homes and our spaces, etc., we're not going to be losing the weight. And I find that sort of, for me, actually, because I lost a bit of weight about kind of 10 years ago when I first got into kind of looking at toxins in our environment, and I'm really understanding like, oh, wow, this is just, my body is like protecting me here. So I need to get rid of the toxins so that then the body can feel like it can let go of the fat. And for me, that was like, absolutely groundbreaking information that I'd never heard before, but also seems so simple.
Well, as you know, we haven't talked about it. I don't know how deep we'll get into it, but I discovered I have mold exposure, toxicity, whatever you want to call it, and mycotoxins are in my body, wreaking havoc in the form of eczema and shortness of breath, respiratory issues. But there's a lot of um, symptoms that come from that: fatigue, muscle soreness.
Mm,
I have walked around Central Park uh, a lot. I have almost 9,000 miles on my Runkeeper app. And I walked around the park yesterday, 6.75 miles. And my body felt like I was hit by a truck later in the day. And that's never how I felt before. So there's fatigue and muscle, and there's depression that comes with it, because when you look and your skin is looking like hell and feeling like hell, and you're digging, scratching holes into your body, you know, it's
mm,
a lot. And I'm
mm.
also a caregiver. So for me, and I have to just be honest with the audience, this is one of the most intensive times of my life, right? I'm dealing with a mother who has dementia, but now I'm wondering if she has dementia at all, because mycotoxins in your brain will appear like dementia, right? So she could be affected as well from what we have in the apartment. I just ordered some things off of Amazon, because not everyone is in a position to just get up and leave, right? That's what some of the people in the Facebook groups will say. Well, I would just get out of there right now. That's very hard to do. And so until then, I have to find ways of making this place safe enough until we can get out. But weight gain is one of the things as well. And toxin and mold, like cancer, love sugar. Right? Isn't that interesting how that all, you know, is in the same boat? But nonetheless, we have to do what we can one day at a time to overcome whatever the hurdles are. I will double back in terms of additives,
Mm.
right? So additives, we have preservatives, we have emulsifiers, we have a bunch of stuff. But hyperpalatability, what does that mean to you, Charlie?
Making it taste good so that I'll be addicted to it and eat it all the time.
You, you just gave a textbook, but
That
that's
must have
so
been what
this.
they've done to that bloody chocolate that I keep eating.
Listen, it is. We're laughing about it. However, it's not funny when you look at the UK is right on our tails. What it's done to the population and our girth,
Yeah.
right? and our health. Because obesity and having a lot of fat, yes, is protective of organs, but overall, it's also our organs are swimming in fat.
Yeah.
That's not what normally happens, right? And so there are people whose job, they don't have bakers at these food companies, people, in case you thought. They have food scientists, they have chemists, and their jobs are to make you keep eating the food. And in the United States, and I'm going to give you a wide range because that's what I'm hearing, anywhere from 60 to 100% of the daily caloric intake of Americans, right? So you have the average Americans, that's probably around 60. Then you have, groups of people like blacks, we're about 70. Now you have young people that move into about 80. And then you have people in places like Mississippi. And a doctor gave me this during my interview. I said, whoa, did you say 100%? Where is that? Mississippi, right?
100%.
100% of their daily caloric intake comes from ultra processed
Wow.
foods.
Okay.
So we have anywhere from 60 to 100% of our daily caloric intake coming from man made substances that they're deceptively calling food, because food should nurture our bodies. There should be nutrients in the food, right?
Hmm.
But they're not. And they're really taking a toll on us. And this is the other thing, they hijack our taste buds. So you have people, there are kids, and I'm sure some adults, who never really eat. They don't know what broccoli tastes like. They don't eat salads, right? If they do, they get some salad in McDonald's, the low grade lettuce that has no nutrients in them. What is iceberg? Iceberg
What I
lettuce.
was gonna say, like the worst thing is, even if you are into your salads and stuff, if you're not eating organic, unfortunately, these days, your vegetables kind of that are farmed in the like traditional way with loads of pesticides and stuff on it, they just don't have the nutrient content anyway that they used to have. So even if you are kind of like eating all your vegetables and everything else, a lot of the kind of farming processes that we've used in modern times basically have taken all the natural nutrients out of these vegetables, which is why we're having to kind of take supplements and things like that, because we're all deficient in all these minerals and everything else that we should be getting from our food. But so what do we do about this, Marcy?
Well, you've raised yet another several issues. So it's hard. Let's start there. I mean, you have to, first of all, educate yourself. You're talking about the three E's of what I do, educating people. We have to fight for regulations that protect us here, because the food companies have a lot of money, and they have teams of lobbyists who, that's all they do is spend their time making sure that they can use products that they choose to. Right now, thank God for and get involved in some of the activism, please. And if you don't have the time, support groups.
Mm, mm.
Support groups like Moms Across America. You know, uh, we have what's the Monsanto Bear. Bear bought Monsanto. They're going state to state here. They have about 13 states they've targeted. Don't quote me on that number, but there's several states they've targeted. They've won the war in a couple. Um, they don't want to take responsibility for the outcome of their roundup. Man just won an enormous amount of money in a lawsuit with them,
I
and
saw that. I saw
they
that in the press actually. That made the press here too.
yeah, they have thousands on deck. So they don't want us to have, they want to be immune from lawsuits. They want to be immune from lawsuits.
Well, the pharmaceutical companies did the same over COVID, right? I mean, it doesn't
Well,
make any
no,
sense. By the way, if we completely mess you up with our product, we don't want to have any responsibility whatsoever, but we still want you to buy our product and we still want to charge absolute fortunes for it. No
well,
thanks.
that's a different scenario in that, it was an emergency. We're all, in fear mode and something has to be done and blah, blah, blah. So they had an emergency uh, through an emergency edict or whatever they call it, they were allowed to produce that,
Yeah.
with immunity. However, this is a company that has already proven that glyphosate is carcinogenic and is causing problems, and now they're saying, well, and this is the other thing we have to be careful of when companies start to produce alternatives. Sometimes the alternatives can be worse than the original. So I say, well, we're not, all of our products are not glyphosate. We have this over here and blah, blah, blah. And again, uh, they don't have to prove out the gate over here. And at least if they do, I mean, it doesn't seem to be working. Our system is definitely broken. Our Junior is definitely aware of that. And I believe he is taking measures towards that. But he has, uh, you know, there are people shaking in their boots. I fear for his life. Okay. He met with all the big food companies. I don't know how that meeting went, but this is the other issue that comes up with here in the United States is, he's taking measures. He wants to close the GRAS loophole. That would be a huge thing there, right? To close that loophole and make them go back on everything that has been grasped into our food supply and prove that it's safe, right?
Mm.
That's going to take a lot of money to do that. One of the major issues has been that the FDA is underfunded here, and the food industry, they pay fees, so they're paying into the FDA, into that whole system. So once you start giving money, you have some authority on top of the authority. They just rolled the red carpet out for you. You know what I mean? So our system is pro corporations. Right now we have, while RFK Jr., he's a very different animal than the rest of our um, government right now, because you have things being slashed, you know, programs that have been helping people eat better being slashed. So, how is he going to make America healthy again with all of these obstacles and all of these um, almost contradictory things going on in other areas of the government that he doesn't control?
Yeah, I can't say that I envy his task that much because it seems like a game of Jenga to me. It's like a whole kind of tower that literally should probably come crashing down because we need to really build the whole kind of like, food industry and everything else from the ground up again, and just really change the way that we're farming from the grassroots up. I mean, we were talking then, you've just talked about kind of like the pesticides and stuff that we're using on our food, which is just so, I mean, to change that paradigm around farmers just seems so slow at the moment. I mean, there's still people out there that believe that we need to kind of spray chemicals on our food. And so until we really change that, mentality, it's going to be really slow. And as you said, every time someone like Bayer or Monsanto, whoever they are, that gets made to take glyphosate or something out of their Roundup product, they just put some other chemical in it that's absolutely even worse. And then it takes however many years to basically go around the legislation and pull them up on it. Meanwhile, like, people are dying because of cancer, basically, because it's sprayed all over our food. And it seems like a crazy battle, which is why I like the amazing work that you're doing. And, I try to spread the word as well around kind of like toxins in our lifestyle and our food, because I really think we have to approach this from a grassroots up angle.
Yeah.
Because as much as I love what JFK, as much as I love what RFK is doing, he's got an uphill battle basically, and I think we need to all take responsibility for our own food and our own lives, because we can't basically rely on the government to do it all for us, unfortunately, as much as I'd like them to. And there's so many people out there that say to me the whole time, oh yeah, but if it wasn't safe, it wouldn't be in the shops. And I'm like,
Well,
oh mate.
well, listen, when I read I never really answered your question about how I went from, lifestyle coach to and fitness trainer. I was stunned to think that there are these unvetted additives, harmful additives in our food supply, on the shelves,
Mm,
taking most of the space in the grocery stores inside of this pantry in here, right? I was shocked, and I'm like, I felt such betrayal. So most people do believe, because we're led to believe we're the greatest country on earth, right? Yet we're spending far more than any other country on healthcare, right? We're spending for, and our health outcomes are in the toilet. How is that? Something's wrong here, right?
Mm,
It's yes, we do have to take personal responsibility, and that's up to us to help people learn about these things. If Boltowitz hadn't written this book about gut health, his only reason for talking about additives is because of the effect it's having on the gut. That was the only reason. It's really caught wreaking havoc on people's intestinal walls and all of this. That
mm,
was his reason for putting the 2 pages he put about this, but I caught that, and other people obviously didn't. Kind of went over my head the first time I was reading it again, and I said, "What? We're being
mm.
poisoned." Now you hear everyone saying that, not being dramatic. We are being poisoned, right? No mother buys something for their kids thinking there's something in there that's going to harm them. And you say read the labels. Well, there are apps out there I'll talk about. There's one called Trash Panda, Trash Trash Panda. You can get a free version. Please get the paid version. It's not a lot of money, and we support these organizations that are helping us judge our food, right? Then there's one called Yuka,
Mm.
YUKA, and they deal not just with food, but with beauty products. Again, the free version gives you a lot of information, but buy the paid version because they're very inexpensive, and they give you a lot of information. They do a grading. Yuka does a grading on from 0 to 100. A neighbor gave me some soy milk, and I scrolled it, and it was 100 out of 100. You rarely see that on Yuka, and I'm like, hey, that's the best. I'm like, where did you get that? Anyways, so yes, we have to take personal responsibility, and we need to rely on the government because it's our tax dollars that are being used. People, some kind of way, forget government is financed by the people. Why should I not have to rely on people whose job it is to do these things, right? So I say, yes, let's rely on the people, because guess who relies on our government? Guess who relies heavily on our government? The
We
food
do.
companies, the chemical companies. All of these companies, they are very intentional about who's in office, who they need to sponsor, and all of that. That's why we are where we are, because money talks and BS walks in this country. And we have to keep the pressure on. Now, the advantage that RFK Jr. has is that MAGA is not God. Excuse me, Ma, Maha. That's like that JFK mistake, right? And I wrote that. I wrote MAGA. I am not MAGA. Please know that it is very different. Make America healthy again. But anyways, so yeah, the whole Maha movement, it's just everything aligned. You have all of these wellness people, and you had this big event, a hearing. I went to this hearing not knowing that it would be in the history books soon, because all of these major influencers showed up. Unlike most of the other, hearings, they rely on the same type of experts. Different type of expert came out, including a young girl, Grace, who, it was just 4 hours. And I mean, they all brought statistics. They all brought a fervor, an enthusiasm, that you don't see in hearings. Hearings are
Mm,
boring.
mm,
I got through four and only left because I had to get my train back to New York City. And the food babe was there. And, a bunch of kind of, famous influencers were there. And RFK Jr. was there. And he has an army of people who believe that, and it's a lot of moms, a lot of mothers who are distraught because they are trying to keep their kids healthy. And it's challenging, far more challenging than they ever thought. That they have to be scientists to be able to buy a product from the store.
there you go. Yeah.
things you can't see on the labels. Natural flavors could be anything. One lady told a story. My kid is allergic to apples, and she had to go around just to try to find out, is there apple in this product? No one knew, right?
Wow.
From the distributor to the company. I mean, she told the story, and it was a very sad commentary of our food situation here. But we're not too far off, and we have an example in Europe and in other countries, right? These companies like Kellogg's and General Mills, they are doing alternate versions of their products, taking out these offending additives because you guys don't allow it. And they still want entry into the marketplace. So why do they put them back in ours? I'll tell
They
you, I
make
heard,
more money.
well, one of the reasons, let's say Fruit Loops. When Kellogg's took out, and I don't want to mix up companies, whatever is their colorful product, when they took it out, when they did the European version here, the kids are used to the colors. See, uh, we're treated like lab rats. I mean, really, our senses, the dopamine hit, they're playing with our minds and all of that. The texture. There are certain textures I can't stand. Water chestnut, I don't like that crunchy. Some people hate liver. When I ate meat, I could eat liver. I wasn't bothered by the texture, but some people can't stand that texture. Fat in my mouth from meat, I couldn't stand that. So, the crunch, these scientists are creating a certain crunch, a certain way something melts in your mouth so that you can chase that again. I mean, it is a science, and it all is about manipulating your senses and my senses, right, to repeat something, to become a habit. Oh, when I feel that on my tongue, oh, I'm going to get that hit. Oh, yeah. It's a drug. They have created drugs in these foods. Because if the
Mm.
doctor says you're going to lose your foot, Marcy, if you don't stop eating that and I keep eating that, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And that's what's happening. We have more amputations here in the United States from type 2 diabetes than from what used to be, car accidents and stuff like that. Something's wrong. We have kids with, they now have to create the term non alcoholic fatty liver disease. Alcoholics were the ones who had fatty liver from all the alcohol. Now, kids have fatty liver, teens have fatty liver from these ultra processed foods. Something's wrong. In fact, I think it's all quite criminal, personally. No one should be able to bring anything to market that wreaks this kind of havoc on an entire population, and we export this garbage,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
We export this garbage.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues is also, I mean, before we get into talking about like your programs, yeah, I'd like to just mention, I think one of the, I can't remember the phrase basically, but there's a phrase in the kind of like toxins industry or, the kind of food additives industry that they talk about, isn't it a non-poisonous dose or something like that? So basically, it's not about, they talk very much about the kind of toxic load. So
Yeah.
this is the problem because basically, okay, one mouthful of Fruit Loops or whatever it is that's got loads of additives in it isn't going to kill you. But the continuous dose of these kind of chemicals and these additives over a long amount of time is going to cause you harm. So I can't remember off the top of my head what the actual phrase is that they kind of always wheel out. They're like, "Oh no,
The
no,
poison
this
is
isn't."
in the dose, I think it is. The poison is in the dose, isn't that
Yes, there you go.
something? So you said this at the beginning. And Darren Olien, Darin, Olien, Olien, has a book called Fatal Conveniences, right? Because one of the reasons we get ourselves into this pickle is because of the convenience. I don't want to cook,
Absolutely.
right? Um, and so, he, in his book, he does a scenario where the woman gets up, she goes into the shower, she's getting dressed, and all the chemicals that she is using before she even puts her clothes on, right? The environmental working group did a They checked a few umbilical cords and they saw over 200 chemicals in the umbilical cord of a newborn. So kids are born toxic. My mom's looking at TV and they're doing these, they're hustling people out of money for these cancer institutions or whatever. And she's like, well, how do babies get, I'm like, because of what you eat or what you're exposed to, your kids will get it. So we are on overload. We're on overload from all the various, it's like when you take a medicine, the doctor says, don't take this because it might mix, it might cause a problem if you have these two medicines together. They don't have any idea as to what all of these, the variety of VOCs and forever chemicals and all this stuff is doing to us. They have no idea. And it's the compounding effect, as you said, you know, that causes issues. We are told in my church to get out of the cities. I'm born in the city. You know what I mean? My mother was born in the country and she got to the city and she doesn't want to leave the city, right? There's an attraction with the city. I understand it now. I understand it because when I can get sick from mold in a building, and I'm speaking to a professor for my toxins, and when I was talking about it, he says, every apartment in there has mold. And I thought he's right. You spend decades not really treating water properly, water damage properly, it turns to mold. 89 or 80% or whatever the chances are. And so I can't move to an apartment, another apartment here. And then when I look at the law, here we go, back to the law. 2018, some company, I'm sure, a landlord, a combination of them said, well, we don't want to have to mitigate or we don't want to get violations from mold that can't be seen. So in order for an inspector to write up this building management company, you have to see the mold. It has to be on a certain surface and it has to be a certain amount. Now, how many people are affected by mold that you can't see? You see how that law works against the residents?
Yep. Totally. And yeah, I mean, it's just as bad in the UK. I mean, unfortunately, we've had some changes around the law recently in the Renters Reform Bill, it's called, basically, that has changed the amount of the kind of time frame with which landlords and social housing landlords basically have to respond to any reports of mold, because we're all in the understanding now of how important it is to address it and how bad it is for your health. But at the same time, I'm conscious of the fact that I don't want it to turn into a bit of a blame game, because we have to work on this together. And it's very easy to point the finger at kind of landlords, I think, on one hand, and say that the property isn't maintained very well. But if the people inside the building are doing things like not ventilating properly, or, drying their washing inside, and sometimes when we're in urban environments, like, what choice do we have if we don't have a garden, etc.? So I'm just conscious of the fact that I don't want it to turn into a bit of a blame game. And I think the answer to it is basically raising as much awareness around it as possible and making sure that people work together, because the whole goal here is basically to improve people's health. Sorry. So I'm always conscious when they have these kind of like changes that unfortunately we're going a little bit more the way of America, and everyone seems to be suing each other at the moment. And I just don't see, that that's very helpful in making us healthier. So I really hope that the changes basically, make everyone more aware, but also kind of create some better solutions, and the way that we kind of treat houses and stuff and the mold within it. But I'm going off topic slightly here, but I wanted to ask you specifically, because I can see the time kind of like running on, about the packages that you offer within your own business, particularly your E3 signature program, I think it is. And also, after that, and I guess maybe you'll cover that in answering that question, but I'd like to know, because obviously we're talking about quite a lot of overwhelming things, and people might be thinking, shit, toxins are everywhere, which they are. But it'd be really good to kind of give some people some, some actionable advice, of maybe looking at kind of the three most important toxins, or the three most important things that you would look at first, in when people are looking at their own lifestyle, or their own home, or their own diet, for example, that you think might be the most important things to address first.
Yeah, all of this will be controversial because you have everybody saying, well, what's the best this or what's the best that? I'll give my humble opinion from my experience and the experience of others. I was, again, gut health. That is where your health is in your gut. And you are feeding the good gut bugs when you eat whole food, plant based, period. The good gut bugs flourish from whole food, plant based. We're talking seeds, we're talking plants, we're talking fruits, vegetables. Those are the better things for your body. Um, Try to eliminate sugar, and it's hard because most of us grow up as little sugar addicts because we are given food to shut us up. Excuse me, giving us. There's some people who put Pepsi Cola in babies' bottles. Yeah, yeah. So, detoxing. And I have to tell you this, you're going to be quite shocked to find out how addictive some of this stuff is when you really try to let go of it. I don't think it's something to play with. Like there are people who say, oh, you can just have this. And when it comes to food, and I found it with alcohol, people are trying to force me to have alcohol. I'm like, no, I don't drink. Now everybody's not drinking because they have now publicized the fact that there's no health benefits to alcohol, period. It's a toxin going into your body, right? And the little benefit that, red wine gives, you can get it from eating the grapes, right? So I would say, look at your food, and it's going to be different for everybody because some people don't have problems with. Um, Try to eat as much whole food, plant based as possible. Even, if you're at, some people don't eat any. So just try to increase the percentage of these vegetables. Buy organic, uh, buy frozen. Because another issue that comes up with food is we're getting food from China, we're getting food from California. I'm in New York City. In the travel, foods lose nutrients.
Mm.
Dr. Casey Means talks about that in her book. She gives us some specifics about spinach. So a lot of times when foods are frozen, they kind of freeze them right away. So more of the nutrients are preserved. Um, you have to supplement nowadays because an apple today just does not have the same minerals, vitamins and minerals as an apple from 50 years ago. Our soil, I mean, I hate to sound, do the best you can. I mean, it really is do the best you can. Um, Look at food as what it is really supposed to be. It's like you go and you put fuel in your car. When we eat, we're putting fuel in our body so we can think, we can function, we can walk, right? We're burning calories sleeping. That's when our bodies are being regenerated. That's why sleep is so important. If you're not sleeping,
Mm.
then your body's not having the time to repair. If you're just eating food right before you go to bed, your body is busy digesting that food. It's not repairing anything because that big meal has to be digested first, right? There's a lot. You have to work with people, get in groups for accountability and support. That's one thing I will say. This whole mold thing to me has been made easier because I'm in a group with 68,000 people. And some are, giving you ask a question and you get the answers and you read other people's answers. And I found the doctor because of this group, because Mount Sinai doctors are gaslighting me, you know? Yeah. So, food, organic, whole food, plant based. Soda is poison. take it out of your diet if you can. Try to have water half your weight in ounces. That's the key versus 8 glasses and all of this. If you're 100 pounds, 50 ounces of water daily, right? And even then, don't do this.
In plastic.
You know, it's so hard. So
Man, the thing that I just drives me nuts is like I love a sauna basically. So I try and be in the sauna like 4 times a week because like for me I feel that that helps me the most with my kind of like detoxing basically. But man, every time I go in the sauna, I see people in there with plastic water bottles. And I'm just like, no, because like obviously when it's kind of like hot, the plastic is going to leach into the water. And I just think these people are sitting there unknowingly there for good reason. Like they're there to kind of like detox their bodies, and yet they're retoxing them with the kind of water, with plasticated water basically. And it really concerns me. But yeah, I can't pluck up the
get a
courage
filter.
sometimes.
Get a filter. Water
Get a
filter.
filter or don't take the bottle, certainly plastic bottle into the sauna, or if you have to, then take a stainless steel one or something that's not going to basically leach into the water. But yeah, it's my pet hate at the moment that.
And even in the shower, when I went to the dermatology people about the eczema, they said, "Do you take showers or do you ever take a bath?" I go, "I no, I don't. I have not taken a bath in 10 years or so." And it's like, "Please take baths." And when you're in the shower, not a hot shower. Only take a shower for 2 minutes. So these what they were doing. Oh, I'm on my phone. I can't show it to you. What they were doing was telling me how to exist in a place with mold. Because when you take a shower and all of the gases come up, the spores are being nebulized.
Yeah. Okay.
So they wouldn't admit, they didn't even, when I would talk to them about mold, they would just ignore it. But they gave me tools, and I knew it had to be related, but someone in the group concretized it for me, so if you don't know or if you suspect you might have mold, take baths. Don't do anything that's going to get all of that uh, steam going on in your bathroom.
Yeah, that's a really good tip actually, because I think also from a chlorine point of view or whatever they say, if you don't have a water filter on your main water supply, and I don't actually here, as in your bathroom kind of like water, then if then you're breathing in all that steam from a really hot shower, and in that water is generally lots of chlorine, fluoride, and all these other kind of chemicals that we're inhaling as well. Just on top of everything else.
See this?
Oh, what, you got your headphones?
Right. After reading Darren O'Lane's, yeah, these the radiation's very real.
Hmm.
And these are my wireless ones. I used to have the little ones in my ear, but you drop them and you can't find them. Those are horrible.
Well, actually, I have to say about those little ones, and I don't know if it was Darren that said this, but there was a report out last year, was it, in 2024, that was showing that the amount of radiation from earbuds was about 50 times the amount of radiation coming from just normal headphones that basically have a cable that plug in. And that's
That,
before you've
uh,
got, there you go. And that's before you've got the kind of EMF specific like headphones that are anti-radiation basically. So yeah, I'm kind of a bit anti the earbuds. And also, again, yesterday when I was in the sauna, there was someone in there with their plastic water bottle and their earbuds in their head in this like huge heat. And I was just thinking to myself, oh no.
they don't know. I'm at the bodega and I see parents, like one guy, he's a Muslim, and he's showing his daughter um, what's pork and what to avoid. And then he's buying her a blue drink, you know, and then now uh, what is it called? Glycerides, or it's diglycerides, whatever that is, and I'll send it to you. It's actually low on battery juice here. It's actually pork as well. My
Oh
sister
wow.
taught us that gelatin, anything that even some you have to get. vitamins that are, if you're avoiding pork, are vegans now because gelatin, anything jello or that is made from pork typically. Uh, but anyways, I mean, we can go on and on. So yeah, some of the solutions are, you know, I think the number one thing is nutrition because that's where you have a lot of control. You have a lot of control. I would take it seriously because people seem to not understand the link between what we put in our bodies, what we put in our bodies, and our health. You know, when you go to the doctor, they start asking you questions about your family, and it gives you the impression that some of these diseases are inevitable, and that's a lie from the pits of hell,
Hmm.
right? It's a very few of them, and Bolsowitz talks about this, are actually genetic or any of that. Most of what we're dealing with in chronic disease is lifestyle oriented,
Hmm.
and because of the lifestyle all around us, and this woman said, "On we look like the nutcases. People look almost look down on people who are trying to look out for themselves because the bulk of us are just um, taking the bait." And I say that I'm
Absolutely.
taking the bait because it's bait, um, to eat certain things and to be drawn in by certain marketing, a lot of which is deceptive, right? So, yeah, and go back to basics, or you mentioned something that was even the next level for protecting yourself from a whole nother level of toxins and radiation from all of the products we're using, the electronics we're using. Um, I stopped plug-ins. I stopped spraying air fresheners because my mom was having issues with them. And when I was a kid, my mom would spray certain perfumes and literally it could send me to the hospital. All of that's chemicals,
Mm.
right? It's all chemicals. And you don't know what they are a lot of times because just like natural flavors, you have fragrance. Well, what's that, right? So the personal care products, Hue and Grace, that's what there are options that are good. Get recommendations. And then look and make sure that the big companies don't go and buy them. They just did that with the little poppy soda that they sell now that's supposed to be good for the gut. It's supposed to have probiotics in it and all. And now PepsiCo just bought them out. Are they going to keep the same ingredients? So you see this happening a lot. I saw that happen with Garden of Life, Jordan Rubin. He
Yeah.
cured himself from Crohn's disease. He was one of the first to do this, and then he sold his company for $54 million. I don't. He and his partner. I don't know who bought it, but are they sticking to the same thing? I'll tell a quick story. There's in one of these business books I read, a company, a restaurant. They made some of the best New England clam chowder. That's the white one, right? And there's Manhattan clam chowder, New England clam chowder. So they're making this chowder, and there it's loaded. People lines around the corner, like the bagel place up on the west side for the Columbia students. Uh, Around the corner, people buy it, and the first thing they think, well, we're going to water it down a bit to make a little more money. And one by one, they lost their customer base because people came there specifically. It was known. There's a bagel shop. The line is around the corner. If they had
Mm.
somebody come in new and they decided to save money and they started to change the formula and change the ingredients and makes things cheaper, they'll lose their base because we can taste the difference. People complain when we used to get 10 shrimp in this. What happened? Prawns, as you guys call it, right? So, just be mindful and educate yourself. No one can afford to sit on the sideline and wait for activists and other people to do stuff. Everyone has to be an activist today. We have to share information with other people. We can't afford to sit on the sidelines because the powers that be, these huge companies and all their finances and their relationships with governments, is problematic.
Mm. I
And
agree. Actually, as a kind of closet, well, activist and environmentalist myself, I do love a bit of a, I love having people on the podcast as well who, like yourself, food justice activists, or I've had some kind of like air pollution campaigners. And, I just think it's really important to basically give a platform to and pay attention to the people that are out there kind of fighting for our cause, but also on our level. Because as we mentioned earlier, I don't think waiting for the government to do anything, we're all going to be waiting far too long, and our health is going to suffer in the process. But,
But we steer the government. We have to steer the government,
oh,
and there
yeah.
are believe in pointing fingers when people are sold out to companies. We're going to point the finger at you because we are getting the horrible results of your of these conflicts of interest. Um, in terms of food activism. So when I read about this, I'm like, I have to do something. And I started a blog. That's where Closed Grass comes in. I started Closed Grass. And it took me off of, because I couldn't really do anything with this knowledge. I'm like, we're fighting against waves and we don't even know it, right? So I started Closed Grass, and I've been reading about Michael F. Jacobson and how it took him 13 years. Actually, it was an interview Dr. Boltowicz was doing in his summit with Michael F. Jacobson is one of the, he's a food additives expert who worked for the government. And then he went on to do one of the top agencies out here now, CPIS, I believe is the acronym. Um, he was part of stopping the trans fats through the city of New York. It took them 13 years, Charlie, 13 years. So I'm like a little up in age now. I'm like, okay, well, I wouldn't mind dedicating the rest of my life to this because the impact would be tremendous, right? And so I get started. This has only been about 3 years for me now. So to have JFK come out of nowhere
Oh, my
and
God.
then to have him, and I'll tell you one of the things that I know I made a difference in was talking to people about these 10,000 additives. No one was talking about that. No one was talking about GRAS. Very few people I ran into knew what GRAS was. And so social media is powerful. You get on some of these people with, having conversations. I'd be in comments. This might shut off my battery. I can't put it underneath. It's going to move the phone. But anyway, so what I'm doing now, my summit is going to be important. Toxins everywhere. It's coming in the fall. It's coming in the fall. Charlie's one of about 19 wonderful experts I have, but I'm creating movies. They're just like a 5-day event. It's 2 hours, and you'll get interviews with people, but you're also going to get themes per day.
Yeah.
Grass is one of the themes I'm going to be working on. I am going to have a mold segment as well, and a couple other segments. So um, if you um, go to GRAS, and GRAS is one S, close GRAS, GRAS.com, and hook into the newsletter. You'll find out more. I do a newsletter on LinkedIn every other week, and I send that out to people on my email list so you can keep up that way. And following the summit, which is going to be 5 days, it's going to be a 5-week boot camp. So anything I talk about in my master class, which is every other week, Charlie was a guest last week and it was great. And she's going to be a guest coming up down the road. You'll be meeting some of the people. I'm doing an organic approach to the marketing until we get around the corner. And then I'm hoping that I get the cooperation of all these wonderful people. I have major, major players involved in this. So um,
You
yeah,
really do, actually. I must say, I've been super impressed. Like, you've put together some really fantastic people, some of my heroes in this space, basically. As you know, I'm kind of like a huge fan of people like Darren O'Lean and Dr. Robert Lustig that you've also got speaking, and I'm sure some of the others. But yeah, I mean, that the
the
book that you've
food
already
babe, the food
the
babe with
food babe.
the
I know she's. I mean, I literally she's everywhere right now, and and making some massive changes in policy and, in kind of like thinking. And yeah, we all need to come at this from our own little individual pockets of the world, I think, and hopefully we will make some changes. And as you say, before we close out, I'd love to, I'm super impressed with what RFK Jr. is doing. And I think for nothing other than, I mean, he's got a massive task ahead of him, but I just think it's so,
He has
uh,
us behind him, and that's the huge difference. He has a massive group of people here who are behind him.
yes, exactly. And also,
Wrong.
it's just amazing to me that it's the first time, and I can't even believe this. It's like the first time we've ever even raised this question on the agenda of any kind of like government cabinet or whatever, because it just seems, well, why have we not been speaking about health like this
Okay, let me
before?
check the record on that. It's happened a couple of times.
Okay.
Michelle Obama and her Let's Move movement, and the same people who are tooting this now were mocking her and ridiculing her efforts. Okay. In fact, in 2017, Donald Trump stopped financing what she started. She
Mm,
had a garden at the White House. She was really promoting it. And there are other people who have done it. So this is just another time and space. And I think with people seeing what's being done in Europe, and because of people like Bonnie Hari, and because of people like Mark Hyman and Dr. Will Boltowitz, and people are and the Callie Means and his sister, Dr. Casey Means, the awareness of what's going on and the impact is at a whole nother level. And people gravitated around RFK Jr. And Trump was smart enough as a marketer to see this guy has a huge following. And it was primarily because of health. So
mm,
it's just how everything aligned. Even Cory Booker, who just stood up and protested for 25 hours, he broke a record in the Senate. He had a bill 2 years ago that was GRAS related. I found it because I was digging for stuff, and it was just languishing. We have things languishing in the bureaucracy,
mm.
right? But now we have a movement, and we
Yeah.
have a leader who has been at it for 20 years himself. He's just not coming to the party, and that's an RFK Jr. And I think we're going to see some huge differences, but we can't rest on our laurels. Whatever comes out of it, we can't sit back and say, oh, wow, because the food companies are relentless and they will come right back around to try to get the leverage they had before.
Yeah, I agree. And it does feel a little bit like they can see the writings on the wall, because there seems a bit of a desperation in some of these kind of chemical companies, basically. As you said, they're desperately changing their kind of formulas, but still kind of pushing hard on it and going from state to state, like campaigning for their products. And it's like, wow, okay, there's a certain kind of like energy of desperation around all this. I just hope that they don't take a foothold again, and that they're kind of on the way out. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see how it goes.
Well, let me thank you, Europe, because it's your example and the example of some Asian countries and even some Mexico and different places where people cannot tell us they can't do certain things because they're already doing it.
Well,
They're
thank
already
you,
doing
Marcy. Thank you very much for all the work you're doing behind this. And yeah, I'm so excited to be part of your Toxin Summit, and I can't wait for it to come out. And as I said before, you've put together some really, really cool people in this space, and I'm excited to learn from it as much as be part of it. So thank you for doing that, and also thank you for your time today.